It all started with a flicker, a small green number on a screen late at night, a tiny surge in value that promised something more, something beyond the predictable trajectory of my life in tech, the comforting but ultimately uninspiring hum of servers, the endless lines of code that built other people's dreams, not my own. I remember the smell of stale coffee in the quiet apartment, the low glow from my monitor illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, my wife already asleep in the next room, her soft breathing a counterpoint to the restless thrumming in my chest as I watched my initial modest investments begin their ascent. That ascent wasn't just financial, it was an ascent of ego, a slow, intoxicating climb into a world where I felt clever, ahead of the curve, a visionary. Bitcoin wasn't just a currency, it was a philosophy, a revolution, and I was on the ground floor, an early adopter who saw the future. My first significant gains felt like a secret handshake with destiny, a quiet whisper that I was finally on the right path, a path to true financial freedom, a future where the relentless anxiety of future utility bills and the ever-increasing cost of living would be a distant memory. We had always been careful with our budget-stretching paychecks, navigating the maze of student loan debt that had shadowed our early married life, constantly aware of the pressure of our mortgage payments, but suddenly the numbers on my screen offered a tantalizing escape. The stale coffee wasn't just stale, it was thick, forgotten hours ago, leaving a bitter residue on my tongue as I chewed on the last remnants of a midnight snack, the faint scent of instant noodles clinging to the air around my desk. The worn keys of my old laptop, smooth with years of use, felt warm beneath my fingertips, a stark contrast to the thrilling chill that ran through my veins as I watched the charts. My wife's breathing, soft and rhythmic from the bedroom, was a reminder of the serene, uncomplicated world I was increasingly leaving behind, a world of shared meals, quiet evenings, and predictable routines. I felt a strange mix of guilt and exhilaration, a sense that I was on the precipice of something monumental, something that would fundamentally alter our trajectory. The glow from the screen cast long, dancing shadows on the beige walls of our cramped apartment, revealing tiny imperfections in the plaster, faded spots where old pictures once hung, the thin carpet feeling rough beneath my stockinged feet. My mind raced, calculating potential returns, envisioning a life free from the constraints of a finite salary, a life where every decision wasn't predicated on the delicate balance of our modest budget. This wasn't merely about money. It was about reclaiming time, about buying back the hours I spent in soulless meetings, the energy I poured into projects I didn't truly believe in. The idea of passive income, a stream of wealth generated without my direct, hourly toil, was an intoxicating siren song, promising not just riches, but a different kind of existence altogether. I imagined waking without an alarm, the morning sunlight streaming through wide windows, not just the grimy pane overlooking a narrow alley. I saw us traveling, truly experiencing the world, rather than just dreaming about it over cheap takeout. The fear of rising utility bills, of the ever-increasing rent, of the specter of unexpected medical expenses that had always lingered in the periphery of our lives, began to recede, replaced by a growing confidence, a silent swagger that swelled within me with each incremental gain. My focus shifted from the incremental savings in our bank account to the exponential possibilities flickering across my screen, a new kind of arithmetic that felt like magic. I began to speak of passive income, of a new kind of wealth creation, of a world free from the traditional stock market's slow grind. My wife, bless her steady heart, listened patiently, a faint crease between her brows, but she trusted me, believed in my intelligence, in my judgment. Her quiet questions, like, "Are you sure this isn't too volatile?" or "What about risk management, really?" were easily brushed aside by my growing enthusiasm, by the undeniable evidence of the numbers. I saw her concerns as charmingly old-fashioned, a remnant of a more cautious era, while I was an architect of the future. We moved into a new place, a beautiful apartment overlooking the city, the kind of place I'd only ever dreamed of, with tall windows that caught the morning light and a kitchen that smelled of new wood and possibility. The move itself was a whirlwind of cardboard boxes and shared effort, but every heavy lift felt like a step up, a tangible manifestation of our ascent. I remember the gleam of the polished hardwood floors under the afternoon sun, the whisper of the wind against the tall glass panes, the expansive view of the city sprawling beneath us like a glittering tapestry. The mortgage was significant, a hefty burden, the kind that used to keep me awake at night in our old place, but I reassured her it was an investment, that my cryptocurrency portfolio was growing faster than any interest rate could ever hope to catch. The quiet anxiety of being house poor was still there, a faint echo in the back of my mind, a tiny whisper of doubt that I quickly silenced with another check of the soaring charts. The fresh scent of new paint still hung in the air, mingling with the subtle aroma of the first home-cooked meals in our spacious kitchen, a sharp, delightful contrast to the scent of the stale coffee from my late-night coding sessions. Every morning, the sunlight would flood the living room, painting bright rectangles on the walls, and I'd walk barefoot on the cool, smooth tile, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. This was our kingdom, built not on traditional income, but on foresight, on embracing the digital frontier. I started talking about a startup, a decentralized platform that would change everything, something that would leverage the power of the blockchain for real-world impact. That's when my friend entered the picture, an old acquaintance from university, charismatic, brilliant, with a gift for weaving grand narratives and a network of potential investors. He spoke my language, not just of code, but a vision of legacy, of building a kingdom. His laughter was infectious, his energy boundless, and his confidence a powerful magnet. We spent long nights in noisy cafes, sketching out ideas on paper napkins, the clatter of ceramic cups and the aroma of roasted beans filling the air as we dreamed. I remember the rough texture of the napkins, the smudged ink of our diagrams, the way the steam from our lattes curled into the cool night air as we spoke, our voices low and fervent, surrounded by the ambient murmur of other late-night patrons. He understood the intricacies of the financial landscape in a way I didn't, talking about complex derivatives, futures contracts, and seed funding rounds with an ease that both impressed and slightly intimidated me. I shared my strategies, my holdings, my meticulously planned risk management protocols, believing in the collaborative spirit, the shared journey. My friend became my partner, and together we built a team, a small, vibrant group of developers and dreamers. I poured more and more of my personal wealth, my hard-won crypto gains, into the venture, convinced this was the next logical step, a transition from simply holding digital assets to actively shaping the future of decentralized finance. The numbers in my own digital wallet, once abstract representations of potential, now felt like solid bricks in the foundation of our shared empire. Each transfer, each commitment of capital, felt like a vote of confidence in myself, in our vision, in a future I was actively constructing. I even considered leaving my stable tech job, the one that had provided a reliable income for over a decade, the one that offered health insurance and a clear career path, a decision that filled my wife with a quiet unease she tried to hide. I could see the worry flicker in her eyes when I spoke of resigning, the way she'd absent-mindedly smoothed the fabric of her dress, her hand trembling almost imperceptibly. She'd ask, "What about the security, the insurance? What if this new thing doesn't work out?" And I'd respond with a flurry of market projections and grand pronouncements about disrupting the industry, my own confidence masking a deeper, unacknowledged tremor of apprehension. The professional jealousy from some of my former colleagues was palpable, a bitter taste in the air during chance encounters at the coffee shop near my old building. They saw my success, the new car, the luxurious apartment, the glow of newfound confidence, but they didn't see the sleepless nights, the constant vigilance over market fluctuations, the silent prayer each time I made a new allocation. Their thinly veiled envy, their snide remarks about get-rich-quick schemes and luck, only fueled my resolve, reinforcing the belief that I was truly pioneering something they couldn't comprehend. My partner assured me he had secured additional funding, that our runway was long, that our vision was clear. He handled the more intricate financial dealings, the intricate web of angel investors and seed rounds, while I focused on the technical architecture, the elegant lines of code that would power our dream. He spoke of new tokens, staking opportunities, complex derivatives that promised exponential returns, and I, swept up in the whirlwind of our shared ambition, didn't question the details as closely as I should have. The abstraction of finance, always a weak point for me, seemed to become his superpower, and I willingly ceded control, trusting his expertise, his boundless self-assurance. He would talk about multi-million-dollar deals, venture capitalists eager to jump on board, the sheer volume of investments flowing into our nascent company, and I would simply nod, my mind already occupied with solving a complex algorithm, designing a more efficient database. The allure of building, creating something tangible out of code, eclipsed the need to scrutinize the opaque financial maneuvers. I focused on the clean lines of the user interface, the robust backend, the security protocols, believing that a solid product would ultimately justify any means of funding. The numbers on our shared ledger continued to climb, at least in theory, showing millions in assets, a vast empire seemingly expanding before my very eyes. I saw the impressive valuations flash across our internal dashboards, the projected income streams, the exponential growth curves, and the sheer scale of it all was dizzying, intoxicating. It felt like we were on the verge of not just a modest success, but a true financial revolution, a redefinition of wealth itself. I would spend hours staring at these digital figures, these glowing promises, feeling a profound connection to the abstract future they represented, a future of limitless possibility. But then the first tremors began. A subtle dip in the market, a minor correction that quickly spiraled into something more significant. I felt the familiar chill of morning air on my skin as I'd get up before dawn, drawn to the screen, my gut churning with a nascent dread. The early morning light, usually soft and hopeful, now seemed cold and sterile, casting harsh shadows on the monitor as I scrolled through the crashing charts. The silence of the apartment was no longer peaceful but oppressive, amplifying the frantic beat of my own heart against my ribs. My partner, usually so effusive, became evasive, his explanations for the declining balances increasingly vague. He spoke of liquidity issues, of temporary market downturns, of needing to restructure our holdings, to move funds to a more secure, less transparent wallet for strategic purposes. Each conversation felt like walking on eggshells, his voice losing its usual booming confidence, replaced by a low, almost mumbled tone that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He'd shift his gaze when I pressed for details, fiddling with his watch or staring intensely at a distant point beyond my shoulder. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him because too much of my life, too much of our future was tied to his words. The quiet anxiety became a clamor, a relentless drumbeat in my head. I started experiencing sharp, sudden headaches that would throb behind my eyes, a constant tension in my neck, and shoulders that never truly dissipated. Sleep became a battle, interrupted by vivid, unsettling dreams of falling, of crumbling towers, of numbers dissolving into thin air. We had poured everything into this startup, and the rising interest rates on our mortgage were beginning to bite, a constant reminder of the physical world's unforgiving realities. The initial euphoria had given way to a gnawing fear, a constant tension in my shoulders, a tightness in my jaw. The scent of our new apartment, once so fresh and full of promise, now seemed to carry a faint undertone of stale air, a scent of something slowly decaying. I started noticing things. My partner's increasingly lavish lifestyle contrasted with the slowing progress on our project, the empty cups of coffee on the table from his supposed all-nighters, the subtle shift in his gaze when I pressed him for details, a certain evasiveness in his eyes that I could no longer ignore. He would show up to meetings in designer clothes, drive a newer, flashier car, while our development team complained about delayed payments and dwindling resources. I tried to dismiss these observations as superficial, the trappings of success, but a worm of doubt had burrowed deep into my consciousness. The calls from our smaller investors started, hesitant at first, then more insistent, asking about their investments, their promised returns, their voices tinged with frustration and an escalating sense of panic. I tried to reach my partner, but his phone went straight to voicemail, his messages unanswered. The cheerful ringtone I'd assigned him now sounded like a cruel mockery, ringing hollowly in the sudden silence of my apartment. Days bled into weeks, each unanswered call amplifying the cold dread that settled deep in my bones, a sensation far worse than any market crash could evoke on its own. It was the crushing weight of betrayal, the sickening realization that the trust I had so freely given, the foundation of our entire venture, had been built on sand, meticulously crafted to crumble beneath me. When I finally gained access to our main accounts, the ones he had supposedly managed, the ones that were meant to hold our multi-million-dollar future, the truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. The screen, once a source of exhilarating green numbers, now displayed stark, unforgiving reds and zeros. The multi-million-dollar valuation was a phantom, a mirage. The funds were gone, siphoned away, slowly at first, then in large, brazen withdrawals, leaving behind a husk, a shell of what was once our crypto kingdom. I saw the transaction logs, the dates and times, the undeniable evidence of hundreds of thousands, then millions, moving into unknown wallets, each line a fresh stab of disbelief and horror. The figures I saw now were not gains, but debt, a monumental, insurmountable debt, far beyond anything my personal insurance could cover, far beyond the remaining equity in our one-stream home. My breath caught in my throat, my vision blurred, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated deception, left me hollowed out empty. The collapse was swift and brutal. The market downturn exacerbated the situation, forcing a cascade of margin calls on any remaining assets I had foolishly linked to the project, obliterating any last vestiges of my personal portfolio. I lost everything, not just the initial investments, not just the startup, but our apartment, our savings, the future I had promised my wife. every single tangible and intangible asset we had built or hoped to build. The stress manifested physically, a sharp pain in my chest, a sudden, unexpected illness that landed me in the hospital, adding the crushing weight of medical debt to an already impossible situation. The sterile scent of antiseptic in the hospital room, the incessant beeping of machines, the rough texture of the sheets against my fevered skin, these details are seared into my memory, a harsh, painful counterpoint to the soft linens of our beautiful apartment. My wife, who had stood by me through the initial anxieties and the growing tension, could not withstand the tsunami of this absolute loss. The revelation of the secret debt, the scale of my risky investments hidden behind layers of hopeful reassurances, fractured something fundamental between us. The endless arguments, hushed at first, then louder, more desperate, echoed through the empty rooms of our once beautiful apartment, each word a shard of glass between us. She spoke of the student loan debt that still haunted her, the burden of our aging parents who relied on us, the children we had dreamed of but could now never afford, her voice cracking with a grief that mirrored my own, yet was entirely separate. The dreams we had woven together, from the simple comfort of a shared future to the grand vision of financial freedom, were now unraveling before our eyes. Her quiet strength finally broke, giving way to a profound, quiet sadness that settled between us like a third, unwelcome presence, an impenetrable wall that no amount of desperate explanation or apology could breach. The divorce was quiet, a series of sterile documents and legal negotiations that formalized the end of not just a marriage, but a shared future, a vision that had evaporated into thin air. I signed the papers with a hand that felt disconnected from my body, the scratching of the pen on paper the only sound in the lawyer's office, a chilling finality to the echoes of what we had once been, a quiet death to a life I had so carelessly destroyed. The professional jealousy from old friends transformed into pity, an even worse burden to bear. Their sympathetic glances, their whispered condolences, felt like a public shaming, a constant reminder of my spectacular failure. The moral compromises I had made, chasing the high-paying but soul-crushing job in my early career to build a nest egg, now seemed utterly pointless, a sacrifice for nothing. The years of long hours, the countless weekends sacrificed, the small joys deferred, all gone, vanished into the ether of a digital scam. I was unemployed, facing financial ruin, my reputation in tatters, my spirit hollowed out. The quiet of the apartment after she moved out was deafening, the lingering scent of her perfume a cruel phantom, a ghost of warmth and comfort in a space now filled with icy emptiness. I'd walk through the rooms, running my hand along the smooth, cold walls, remembering the day we picked out the paint, the laughter, the plans we made for future holidays, for quiet evenings. Now there was just silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old building settling, each sound amplifying the vastness of my solitude. I spent weeks in a fog, staring at the empty cups on the kitchen counter, the unpaid bills piling up, the supermarket menu on the fridge, a cruel reminder of the simple choices I could no longer afford, of the basic needs that now felt like luxuries. The chill of morning air felt colder than ever before, seeping into my bones, a physical manifestation of my despair, a constant reminder of the warmth that had left my life. My world had not just crumbled, it had been atomized, reduced to dust, leaving me stranded in a desolate landscape of my own making. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, the weight of my failure, the shame, pressing down on me like an invisible anchor, pinning me to the mattress, each breath feeling like an effort. The taste of failure was bitter, metallic, always present on my tongue. I replayed every conversation, every decision, every moment of blind trust, dissecting them with agonizing precision, searching for the exact point where I went wrong, where I allowed ambition to eclipse common sense. The guilt was a suffocating blanket, smothering any flicker of hope. But then, slowly, imperceptibly at first, something shifted. A small, almost imperceptible flick of resilience, like a tiny pilot light igniting in the vast darkness. It began with the physical sensations, a sudden awareness of the sharp tang of morning air through an open window, the rough texture of the floor beneath my bare feet as I finally swung them out of bed. I started with the simplest things, making my bed, smoothing the rumpled sheets, feeling a small, almost childish sense of accomplishment. Then washing the few dishes in the sink, scrubbing the dried food from the ceramic, feeling the warm water on my hands, a simple act of tidiness that brought a strange sense of order to the chaos within. Taking a walk around the block, feeling the sun on my face, the cool breeze ruffling my hair, listening to the distant sounds of traffic and birdsong. The world outside, indifferent to my personal catastrophe, continued turning. The smell of freshly cut grass from a neighbor's lawn, the distant sound of children playing in a nearby park, their carefree laughter echoing down the street, the sight of an old man watering his flowers with quiet dedication, his movements slow and deliberate. These small, everyday scenes began to pierce the veil of my self-pity, reminding me of a persistent, quiet beauty that existed beyond my internal turmoil. I saw the vibrant green of the leaves on the trees, the subtle variations in the gray of the sidewalk, the way the light caught the glass of the apartment buildings. I understood then that life, true life, was not in the soaring numbers on a screen, nor in the grand promises of a crypto kingdom, but in these quiet, persistent moments in the tangible, everyday world that I had so thoroughly neglected in my pursuit of abstract wealth. I found a new job, not in tech, not as glamorous, but stable, offering a modest but reliable income. It involved working with my hands, building things, tangible things, assembling components in a small manufacturing workshop, feeling the solid weight of tools in my grip, the smell of sawdust and machine oil filling the air, a refreshing contrast to the ephemeral digital realm that had brought me to my knees. The work was honest, the pay sufficient to cover a small rental, a tiny studio apartment with a single window overlooking a quiet street, to begin the slow, arduous process of paying down the residual debt, of budgeting with a precision born of necessity, tracking every single expense, every incoming dollar. I had to learn to live simply again, to appreciate the warmth of a homemade meal, a simple bowl of soup, feeling the heat spread through my hands from the ceramic bowl, the comfort of a cheap but sturdy pair of shoes, the quiet joy of a book from the library, its pages soft and worn from many hands. The constant anxiety over soaring inflation, high utility bills, and the ever-increasing cost of living hadn't disappeared, but my perspective had changed. I was no longer chasing a mirage of limitless wealth to escape them. I was confronting them head-on, with a clear head and a humble heart, understanding that true security came not from vast fortunes, but from prudent choices and an unwavering commitment to integrity. I started seeing my aging parents more often, not as a burden, but as a connection to something real and enduring, a grounding force in my shattered world. I helped my father fix a leaky faucet in their old kitchen, the rhythmic drip of water ceasing under my steady hand, shared a quiet cup of tea with my mother, listening to her gentle stories of their youth, the familiar warmth of her hand in mine, feeling the comforting weight of generational continuity. The sandwich generation pressure was still there, the unspoken worries about their health and financial stability, but now it felt like a grounding force, a reminder of the preciousness of human connection, of the responsibilities that bind us to those we love, responsibilities I had once tried to outrun. The echoes of the million-dollar betrayal still resounded at times, a phantom ache, a ghost in the corners of my mind, a sudden pang of regret in the quiet of the evening. I still felt the pang of what I had lost, the woman I loved, the future we had envisioned, the dreams that had evaporated into nothingness. That part remains gently bittersweet, a quiet sadness that will always be a part of my story, a testament to the profound cost of my ambition and my blindness. But the absolute loss had also stripped away the superficial, the hollow pursuit of grandeur, leaving behind a core of resilience, a profound appreciation for what truly matters. I learned to be content, not with wealth, but with peace, with the steady rhythm of honest work, with the simple solace of human connection, with the quiet dignity of rebuilding, piece by painstaking piece. I learned that true security wasn't in a digital kingdom, but in the quiet strength of my own two hands, in the simplicity of honest work, in the small, everyday joys that cost nothing but attention, in the enduring power of forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness. The future is modest, yes, but it is built on solid ground, brick by slow brick, not on the shifting sands of speculative dreams or the hollow promises of others. And in this quiet aftermath, I have found a profound, unexpected kind of wealth, a contentment that no market crash can ever take away. If you've ever faced a crushing financial loss or a profound betrayal that made you reevaluate everything, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. What fundamental truth did you discover when your world crumbled around you? Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear a message of hope, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and quiet transformation. And as a simple way to connect, what's one small, unexpected joy you experienced this week that money couldn't possibly buy?